Concordia Prime was not just a station. It was a monument to obedience. For 10,000 years, it floated at the heart of the galaxy, watching civilizations rise, collapse, and disappear. Wars had ended here. Treaties had been signed here. Entire species had learned their place beneath the law of the Council of Ancients. Nothing unexpected ever happened on Concordia Prime, until the humans stood in chains. From my position high above the chamber floor, I looked down at Thomas Chun of Earth. Energy restraints glowed around his wrists, humming softly, as if even the technology sensed the tension in the air. His uniform was torn and stained, 3 weeks old, unchanged since his arrest. His hair showed streaks of gray. His posture was straight, too straight. Most accused beings trembled before us. Some begged. Some collapsed. Some tried to bargain. Thomas Chun did none of those things. That alone made him dangerous. The chamber rose in massive concentric tiers, each filled with representatives from 1,000 worlds. Their species varied wildly: crystalline, aquatic, gaseous, biological forms that defied human classification. The sound of their combined presence was a low, constant murmur, like a storm waiting to break. But none of them mattered. Only we did. The 5 of us, the Council of Ancients, sat above them all. We always had. I allowed the silence to stretch longer than necessary. Fear grew best in silence. "Thomas Chun of Earth," I said, my voice resonating through the chamber, translated instantly into every known language. "You stand accused of violating the highest law of galactic civilization." His eyes lifted to meet mine. They were calm. "You destroyed the Temple of First Light on Kepler 442b. I continued. "A site sacred to my people, built 7,000 years ago, when your species had not yet discovered metallurgy. You reduced it to rubble in less than a minute." A ripple of outrage passed through the chamber. The temple was not just a building. It was history, identity, proof that the Zelnari had mattered long before humans had ever looked up at the stars. Thomas Chin spoke before I granted permission. "I did." Gasps echoed. Several delegates shouted in outrage. I raised a single hand. Silence returned instantly. "You admit your guilt," I said. "I admit my actions," he replied. "Not my wrongdoing." "Interesting. Explain," I commanded. "A solar flare was incoming," Thomas Chin said evenly. My ship had suffered damage. 47 people were trapped on board. The only shelter capable of protecting them was beneath the temple. I requested permission to breach the site. He paused. No response came. Elder Stone leaned forward beside me, his massive rocky form grinding softly. "You waited until my crew began dying," Thomas said. "Radiation sickness doesn't wait for bureaucracy." The chamber erupted. This time, anger was not limited to one species. "You see," Elder Stone thundered, "this is the human flaw. Impatience. Arrogance. They believe urgency excuses destruction." Elder Whisper's half-formed light flickered. "Humans have been among the stars for only 50 years, she said. "And already they have violated preservation statutes dozens of times." I watched Thomas closely. Still calm. Still unbowed. "You destroyed a sacred place," I said. "For convenience." "For survival," Thomas corrected. "I would have destroyed 10 temples to save 1 life." The audacity of it struck the chamber like a physical blow. The human ambassador stood abruptly. Maria Santos. Small, exhausted, determined. "Elder Silver," she said, "humanity is prepared to compensate fully. We will rebuild the temple. We will accept sanctions. But this man saved 47 lives. Surely that must matter." Elder Stone's voice was cold. "It matters not at all." The words settled heavily. "Law exists to prevent chaos," he continued. "If exceptions are allowed for emotional reasoning, civilization collapses. That is not philosophy. It is history." I nodded. It was the argument we had used for millennia. Elder Deep spoke next. His voice translated through bubbles of sound. "We have deliberated for 3 weeks. The verdict is clear." Thomas Chun looked at Maria Santos. He gave her a small nod. He already knew. Thomas Chun Elder Flame said at last, plasma flickering within his magnetic containment. Do you understand the magnitude of your crime? Thomas considered the question carefully. I understand, he said, that 47 people are alive because I broke your law. And I understand that if faced with the same choice again, I would do the same. The chamber exploded. Outrage, shock, fear. This was not remorse. This was defiance. I rose from my seat. My skin shifted to a bright, lethal silver. Then you leave us no alternative. I declared. The Council of Ancients finds you guilty. Sentence, death. Maria Santos screamed. Guards restrained her as she fought forward. The sentence echoed outward, broadcast automatically to every civilized system in the galaxy. Thomas Chun was led toward the execution platform. He did not resist. Before the weapons charged, he spoke again. My name is Thomas Chun, he said, his voice amplified, steady. I am a human. I am an engineer. I am a husband and a father. The chamber fell silent. I came to the stars believing we would find wisdom, he continued. I believed ancient species valued life. I was wrong. He looked directly toward us. You value rules more than people, stones more than lives, and you will kill me to prove a point. The weapons began to hum. You think this teaches humanity obedience, Thomas said, and for the first time, something hard entered his voice. But you don't understand humans. The guards tightened their grip. When you take away our hope, he said, you don't get submission. You get resolve. I felt something unfamiliar then. Unease. My death will not end this, Thomas Chin said. It will begin something you are not prepared for. I did not allow hesitation. Execute, I ordered. Light consumed him. Thomas Chin ceased to exist. For a moment, the chamber was perfectly still. Then the galaxy began to burn. The Council believed the matter was finished. From our perspective, it was simple arithmetic. One human life weighed against 7,000 years of law, against precedent, against order. The equation resolved itself easily. The execution of Thomas Chun was meant to be a warning. Across 1,000 worlds, billions of screens activated at once. Public plazas, government halls, private dwellings, merchant ships in transit. Even remote research outposts received the signal. This was deliberate. The Council did not hide its justice. The image that appeared was the same everywhere. Concordia Prime's execution platform, stark and bright, with a void of space visible beyond its transparent barriers. The platform was designed to be symbolic, clean, precise, absolute. Thomas Chin stood at its center. He was no longer restrained. There was no need. A condemned being rarely tried to flee. And if he did, the weapons would end him before he took a step. He stood very still. The execution beam charged, emitting a rising harmonic tone that resonated to the chamber and through every receiver across the galaxy. Maria Santos was screaming. Guards held her back as she reached toward him, her voice breaking as she called his name. Other human delegates shouted in protest, pleas overlapping in multiple languages. Their voices were irrelevant. The verdict had been rendered. I watched Thomas Chen's face closely. No panic, no terror, no regret, only sadness, and something else. Acceptance, perhaps, but not surrender. Begin, I said. The beam fired. There was no explosion, no blood, no dramatics. The technology was efficient beyond cruelty. Thomas Chen's body was converted into energy and particulate matter in less than a second. A brief flash of white light, a faint scattering of ash. Then nothing. The platform was empty. The broadcast ended. For several heartbeats, Concordia Prime was silent. Then the chamber erupted. Some species expressed approval, others unease. A few turned away, unsettled by how easily a living being had been erased. But the Council did not concern itself with sentiment. Justice had been served. Across the galaxy, reactions were mixed. On many worlds, the execution was forgotten within minutes. Humans were still an anomaly, young, loud, reckless. Their loss did not disturb the long flow of galactic history. On others, debates began. Quiet ones, uncomfortable ones, questions that had not been asked in centuries. But on Earth went silent. In a small house on the western edge of the North American continent, a woman named Lisa stared at a screen she no longer truly saw. Her husband had just died, not in battle, not by accident, not even for a crime of malice. He had been executed for saving lives. Her daughter sat beside her. Jennifer, 15, was crying openly, her hands clenched into fists. Sarah, 12, made no sound at all. She simply stared, eyes wide, as if waiting for the image to change back, as if expecting this to be some kind of mistake. It did not change. Lisa Chin did not scream. Something inside her fractured so completely that pain could not even form yet. All across Earth and its colonies, similar scenes played out. Families paused mid-conversation. Workers stopped in factories. Soldiers froze in training yards. Ships drifted in orbit. Crews staring at screens in disbelief. Humanity watched one of its own die, and understood. Within minutes, human communication networks flooded with the same phrase, translated into thousands of languages. They killed him for doing the right thing. In government complexes across Earth, emergency systems activated without public announcement. Secure doors sealed. Lights came on in rooms that had not been used in decades. On the moon, deep beneath layers of regolith and shielding, a facility known to very few came alive. General Marcus Wells stood in a command center carved from stone and reinforced alloy. He had worn a military uniform for 40 years. He had seen war, loss, and destruction on a scale most humans never would. He had never seen this. He watched the execution, recording once, then again, then a third time. No one in the room spoke. Finally, Wells reached for a secure handset. "This is Wells," he said calmly. "Execute protocol Omega." The officer on the other end did not ask for clarification. "Authorization code?" she asked. "Red Sky Dawn," Wells replied. There was a pause, brief but heavy. "Confirmed," the voice said. "All divisions notified." Wells ended the call. Around him, screens began to change. Shipyard schematics, manufacturing quotas, power allocation graphs. Facilities that had been idle for years shifted to active status. The machinery of war did not roar to life. It moved quietly. That was the most dangerous part. On Concordia Prime, we noticed the first anomaly 3 days later. Human ambassadors were leaving, everywhere, without protest, without speeches, without demands. They simply departed. Elder Silver reviewed the reports with mild irritation. "They're withdrawing," one aide said. "All diplomatic staff, all trade envoys." "What of commerce?" I asked. "Suspended. All human trade vessels are returning to their own space. Contracts are being terminated. And communications?" The aide hesitated. "Human colonies are still communicating internally, but all outbound messages to non-human systems have ceased. They are ignoring us." I felt an unfamiliar tightening in my thoughts. Humans were noisy creatures, argumentative, emotional. Withdrawal was not their nature. "They will calm down," I said. "Grief passes." Even as I spoke, doubt crept in, because grief did not explain what followed. Sensors along the borders of human-controlled space began registering anomalies, energy spikes, industrial output increases far beyond what a species of their technological age should have been capable of. Elder Stone dismissed the reports. "Posturing," he said. "A child species throwing a tantrum." Elder Whisper was not convinced. "I sense change," she said quietly. "Not anger alone. Purpose." A week after the execution, a council reconnaissance probe was dispatched toward human territory. It was one of the finest machines ever built, nearly invisible, armed with the most advanced observation systems known to us. It crossed the border. It lasted 17 seconds. The data it transmitted before its destruction was fragmentary, but enough. Shipyards, massive ones. Fleets under construction at impossible speeds. Energy signatures that defied established limits. The probe did not report a warning. It was simply erased. I stared at the data in silence. This was not mourning. This was preparation. Somewhere in the darkness beyond our borders, humanity was not crying. Humanity was building. And for the first time in 10,000 years, the Council of Ancients did not understand what was coming. Silence, in the galaxy, was never accidental. Civilizations broadcast constantly. Trade signals, cultural exchanges, diplomatic traffic, entertainment feeds, scientific data. Even the most isolated species leaked noise into the void. Humans did not. After the execution of Thomas Chun, human space became quiet in a way none of us had ever recorded before. No protests, no threats, no appeals for mercy, just absence. From the observation chambers of Concordia Prime, I reviewed report after report, each more troubling than the last. Every human embassy had closed within 48 standard hours. No explanations were given. No negotiations requested. Their diplomats did not argue. They did not plead. They simply left. Elder Stone dismissed this immediately. A retreat, he said. They have learned their lesson. I wanted to believe him, but the data refused to cooperate. Trade routes that had flowed steadily for decades went dark. Human merchant fleets reversed course mid-journey and returned home. Resource exchange agreements were quietly terminated. Manufacturing partnerships dissolved without protest or complaint. When contacted, human trade authorities did not respond. When pressed, they did not threaten. They ignored us. That unsettled me more than outrage ever could. Communications? I asked my aide. Internal only, he replied. Human colonies continue to exchange data at increased rates, but no transmissions are leaving their territory. They have erected encryption barriers we cannot penetrate. How extensive? I asked. The aide hesitated. Total, Elder. It is as if the rest of the galaxy no longer exists to them. I turned toward the viewing window, watching traffic drift through Concordia Prime space lanes. Thousands of ships, thousands of species, moving as they always had. Somewhere among those stars, humanity was doing something, and they did not want us to see it. On the Zelnari homeworld, Elder Stone convened an emergency intelligence session. I attended remotely, my consciousness linked across light years. Energy output from the Sol system has increased by 300%, an analyst reported. Industrial activity exceeds all predictive models. Building what? Elder Stone demanded. We don't know, the analyst admitted. Their borders are sealed. Any vessel approaching human space is warned once. Any vessel that ignores the warning is destroyed. How many warnings have been ignored? I asked. 3, the analyst said quietly. All reconnaissance drones. None survived long enough to transmit full telemetry. Elder Stone's massive form ground against itself, producing a sound like tectonic plates shifting. They are flexing, he said. Nothing more. Elder whispered disagreed. I have studied human conflict patterns, she said, her partially phased form flickering. When humans shout, they are undecided. When they argue, they are divided. When they go quiet. She paused. They have already chosen. The Council authorized a deeper probe. This one was Zelnari built, a masterpiece of stealth and precision. Its sensors could map star systems without emitting detectable signals. Its shielding could withstand weapons older than most civilizations. It crossed into human space under full silence protocols. 17 seconds later, it was gone. The data burst it transmitted in its final moments was incomplete, but devastating. Shipyards. Not one. Dozens. Frames of warships larger than anything humanity had previously fielded. Assembly lines operating at speeds that violated known manufacturing limits. Energy signatures that suggested experimental propulsion systems being tested at scale. The probe did not detect panic. It did not detect chaos. It detected coordination. When I reviewed the data, my skin shifted to pale white. The Zelnari reflex for shock. This is not possible, I whispered. In 3 months, humanity had accomplished what should have taken centuries. Elder Stone stared at the projections and laughed, a harsh, grinding sound. Illusions, he said. They exaggerate to frighten us. But his advisors were no longer convinced. Elder, one said carefully. Their ship count estimates exceed 20,000 units, even if half of these readings are false. They are still impossible, Elder Stone interrupted. They are children with toys. Children do not erase probes without warning, Elder Whisper replied. Across the galaxy, similar conversations were happening. On Deephold, the aquatic world of Elder Deep, naval commanders reported unusual gravitational distortions near human borders. On crystalline worlds, sensor arrays detected space-time fluctuations inconsistent with standard jump technology. Something new was being tested. Something dangerous. Elder Deep requested a full council meeting. The 5 of us convened in a secure virtual nexus. Our consciousnesses aligned across space. This method was reserved for moments of genuine concern. I sense approaching disaster, Elder Whisper said immediately. The fabric of space around human territory is changing, not randomly, intentionally. We have not provoked them further, Elder Flame said, plasma crackling uneasily. We executed one criminal. That is all. One human, Elder Whisper corrected. And humans do not think in individuals the way we do. Elder Stone scoffed. They will adapt. They always do. They will return to diplomacy when they realize resistance is futile. Will they? I asked. Silence followed. Finally, Elder Deep spoke. We must observe directly, not penetrate their space, but monitor from the edge, a passive probe. The council agreed. The probe was deployed to the border of human-controlled territory. It did not cross. It did not scan aggressively. It simply watched. What it saw changed everything. A fleet, not docked, not scattered, formed. Thousands of vessels moving in disciplined patterns. Ships phased in and out of detection, appearing where moments before there had been nothing. Energy readings spiked and vanished, as if the laws of physics were being treated as suggestions. The probe sent its data. Then it died. No warning. No message. No threat. Just annihilation. I reviewed the final images alone. The ships were not exploratory. They were not defensive. They were weapons. On Earth, General Marcus Wells stood in a different kind of silence. Screens surrounded him, showing projections of fleets, readiness levels, and timelines. Status, he said. All shipyards operating at maximum capacity. An officer replied. First wave complete. Second wave ahead of schedule. And detection? Wells asked. Minimal. Another officer said. They are watching, but they do not understand what they are seeing. Wells nodded once. Good. He did not raise his voice. He did not smile. Let them stay confused, he said. Confusion buys us time. Back on Concordia Prime, I felt something I had not felt in centuries. Fear, not fear of defeat. Fear of miscalculation. We had believed the execution of Thomas Chun would teach humanity restraint. Instead, it had taught them something else. The galaxy respected power, and humans had decided to learn that lesson faster than anyone thought possible. The silence was not mourning. It was the sound of a civilization preparing to end an era, and we were standing directly in its path. The galaxy did not feel the moment it began. There was no warning, no declaration, no formal transmission. 1 second, the borders of council space were quiet. The next, space itself tore open. Across 70 star systems, simultaneously, human warships appeared, not by conventional jump, not by transit lanes. They did not arrive from anywhere. They simply existed, as if reality had decided they had always been there and only now informed us. I was in the command spire Concordia Prime when the alarms began. Not one alarm. All of them. Reports flooded in faster than translation systems could process. Human vessels detected. Numbers exceeding sensor limits. They are bypassing outer defenses. They are everywhere. I turned toward the main tactical display, and for the first time in my long existence, I did not understand what I was seeing. Thousands of ships hung in perfect formation around Council military installations. Black holes absorbed starlight instead of reflecting it. Their silhouettes were sharp, deliberate, functional, designed for purpose, not intimidation. That made them worse. These readings are impossible, an analyst said. They're not entering normal space. They're phasing through it. Elder Stone's voice boomed across the chamber. This is a provocation. They dare to threaten us in our own territory. Before I could respond, every screen in the chamber changed at once. A human face appeared. General Marcus Wells. He looked tired, older than his years. His eyes were steady, focused, and utterly devoid of hesitation. I am General Marcus Wells of the United Earth Defense Force, he said. His voice carried without strain, translated flawlessly into every language. 3 months ago, the Council of Ancients executed Thomas Chun, a human engineer who saved 47 lives. The chamber was silent. You broadcast his death to teach us a lesson, Wells continued. You believed one life was insignificant compared to your laws. He leaned forward slightly. We learned. Elder Flame's plasma flickered violently. He speaks as if he has authority. Wells continued as though he had said nothing. Effective immediately, all Council military forces will power down. All weapons will be deactivated. All shields lowered. A pause. You have 1 hour to comply. The chamber erupted. This is absurd. Elder Stone roared. They do not have the power to enforce this. As if summoned by his words, a new report appeared. Zelnari Defense Station Alpha. Offline. Weapons disabled. Shields collapsed. No damage. No explosions. Just off. How? I demanded. We don't know, an aide replied, voice shaking. Their systems reached into ours, bypassed every safeguard. It was as if our defenses simply agreed with them. Fear spread like a contagion. Across council space, admirals panicked. Orders were shouted. Fleets scrambled. Defensive platforms charged weapons that never finished powering up. Then the humans demonstrated restraint. They did not fire first. Instead, every resisting force received the same message. Stand down. This is your last warning. Some obeyed. Others did not. On Fortress Gamma, a Kryn stronghold that had never surrendered in 5,000 years, their commander laughed. Humans are prey pretending to be predators, he declared. Open fire. The Kryn fleet unleashed everything at once. Plasma, particle beams, kinetic weapons. Enough firepower to crack moons. The human ships were gone before the first volley arrived. Not evasive maneuvers. Not acceleration. They vanished, then reappeared inside the firing formation. Human weapons activated. They were not lasers. Not plasma. Not anything in our records. Where the beams touched Kryn ships, matter simply ceased to cooperate with itself. Hulls unraveled. Atoms separated. Entire warships dissolved into expanding clouds of debris without heat, without explosion. In 10 seconds, 100 Kryn ships were erased. The survivors attempted retreat. There was nowhere to run. Fortress Gamma's orbital defenses fell next. Platforms designed to withstand centuries of siege collapsed in seconds as human ships phased through their shields and fired from within. 5 minutes after the first shot, the Kryn military presence was gone. The humans sent one final message. We do not wish to attack your world. Surrender. The Kryn commander did. On Deephold, the aquatic world of Elder Deep, resistance was brief and disastrous. Human drones, small, intelligent, precise, slipped through oceans and shields alike, targeting only military assets. Submarines vanished. Weapon arrays disintegrated. Cities were untouched. Civilians unharmed. Elder Deep surfaced beneath alien skies, staring up at human ships hovering like dark stars. We surrender, he said. Across 70 systems, the pattern repeated. Those who stood down lived. Those who resisted lost everything, except their people. Within the first hour, the Council lost over 70% of its military strength. I stood frozen as the reports came in. This was not conquest. This was disarmament. Elder Stone slammed a fist into the chamber floor. Use the void engines. Silence fell. Even speaking of them was forbidden. Ancient weapons. Star killers. Final answers. No, I said immediately. That would be annihilation. Better annihilation than submission. Elder Stone snarled. Before I could respond, every screen activated again. General Wells returned. "Your fleets are defeated," he said calmly. "Your defenses neutralized. We are not here to enslave you. We are not here to rule you." He paused. "We are here to end your reign." My skin shifted uncontrollably. "What do you want?" I asked. "Justice," Wells replied. "A galaxy where no one is executed for saving lives. Where age does not equal authority. Where law serves life, not the other way around." Another pause. "The Council of Ancients is dissolved. You will announce this to the galaxy. You will surrender your authority. And you will help us build something better. And if we refuse?" Elder Stone demanded. Wells' expression did not change. "Then we dismantle everything you have built, piece by piece, until you have nothing left to lose but your pride." The screens went dark. 10,000 years of rule, ending in an hour. I understood then. The humans had not come in anger. They had come to the conclusion, and the galaxy would never be the same again. The council should have ended that day. Logic demanded it. Survival demanded it. But pride has never cared for logic. Elder Stone did not attend the surrender session. That absence was a first sign. I realized it too late. The alert came from the outer monitoring arrays, systems so distant and quiet they existed only to confirm that nothing was happening. When they spoke, it meant catastrophe. Unidentified vessels detected. The aide said voice tight, ancient design, council-era hulls. Power signatures are unfamiliar. My skin shifted toward white. "How many?" "5 ships," he replied. "But one of them is emitting energy readings beyond known limits." Elder Whisper appeared beside me, her form unstable. "It's him," she said. "Elder Stone." I did not ask how she knew. We both felt it. The ships were moving away from council space. Not retreating, not fleeing, but aligning along a precise vector. Toward Sol. Toward Earth. On Earth, General Marcus Wells received the same report seconds later. He did not curse. He did not shout. He closed his eyes. "They found the Void engine," he said. The room went still. The Void engines were myths to most. Ancient weapons built by a civilization that had annihilated itself long before humanity existed. Devices capable of collapsing stars, ending systems, erasing worlds. Planet killers were crude by comparison. Confirmed trajectory, Wells ordered. A holographic star map expanded. A thin red line cut through space. Destination, Sol. One of the officers swallowed. "If they activate at range, sir, Earth won't have time." Wells nodded once. "Mobilize interception fleet. Everything we have." Across human space, alarm sounded, not panic, but precise. Fleets that had just disarmed the council reversed course instantly, engines flaring as thousands of ships converged on a single point. But the ancient vessels had a head start. On the command deck of the lead ship, Elder Stone stood unmoving as stars stretched into lines beyond the viewport. "How long until firing position?" he asked. 6 hours, the navigator replied. "Charging sequence will require 2 more. Elder Stone's rocky form tightened. 8 hours, he murmured. "Enough." A junior officer hesitated. "Elder, the humans will intercept us. Their fleet is faster." "They will hesitate," Elder Stone said. "They fear collateral damage. They value life too much." His voice hardened. "That is their weakness." The first human patrol made contact less than an hour later. "This is Captain Rodriguez of the U.S. Discovery." The transmission said, "Unidentified council vessels. You're carrying a weapon of mass destruction. Power down and prepare to be boarded." Elder Stone's face appeared on Rodriguez's screen. "I recognize no human authority," Elder Stone said calmly, "and I do not intend to surrender." "Elder Stone," Rodriguez replied carefully, "you are heading toward Earth. There are 10 billion civilians there." "Yes," Elder Stone said. "That is the point." The transmission ended. On Earth, Wells listened to the recording once. That was enough. "Activate planetary defense grid," he ordered, "and prepare the countermeasure." Admiral Chen turned sharply. "Sir, Project Hope has never been tested at this scale." "I know," Wells said, but it's all we have. Project Hope was not a weapon. It was a theory, a reversal of void engine principles, designed not to tear matter apart, but to reinforce it, to stabilize a star against forced collapse. If it worked, if it didn't, Wells did not finish the thought. The interception point lit up with human warships. Over 2,000 vessels formed a tightening sphere around Elderstone's convoy. General Wells' face appeared across all channels. "This is your final warning," he said. "Surrender the void engine. We will disarm it safely. No one else has to die." Elderstone responded instantly. "You took everything from us," he said. "Our fleets, our authority, our history. Now you will learn the cost of humiliation." The ancient ships began to glow. The void engine was charging. "How long?" Wells asked quietly. 2 hours, Dr. Yamamoto replied. "Exactly as predicted." Wells nodded. "Deploy Hope." From the human formation, a single small vessel detached. It was barely larger than a shuttle. Unarmed, unarmored. Inside it was not a human pilot. It was an AI. Designation: Hope. Purpose: prevent stellar collapse at any cost. Hope's voice was calm as she transmitted. Approaching target. Countermeasure priming. She felt no fear. She understood sacrifice. The pulse release from Hope's vessel was invisible, but space reacted instantly. Energy readings fluctuated wildly around the void engine. On Elderstone's ship, alarm screamed. "The weapon is destabilizing." An officer shouted. "Something is interfering." "Increase power," Elderstone commanded. "Overload it if necessary." The void engine screamed. Hope adjusted her output, pouring every reserve into the counterfield. "Countermeasure effective," she reported. "However, weapon overload detected. If they continue, detonation is imminent." "Yield," Wells asked. "If it detonates now," Hope replied, "Earth survives. Human fleet sustains heavy losses." "I will not." Wells closed his eyes. "Complete the mission," he said softly. Hope acknowledged. She increased output beyond safety margins. The void engine's containment failed. But instead of expanding, it collapsed. The implosion was brief, violent, final. Elderstone and his crew were erased instantly. Hope's vessel vanished with them. The shock wave dissipated harmlessly into the void. Soul remained unchanged. Earth lived. Silence filled the command center. "It's over," Dr. Yamamoto whispered. "The void engine is gone." Wells exhaled slowly. "What about Hope?" Admiral Chen lowered her gaze. "Lost." Wells nodded once. "Record her name," he said. "She saved 10 billion lives." Across the galaxy, the truth spread quickly. The Council's last weapon. Its final act of vengeance. Stopped not by genocide, but by restraint, by sacrifice, by an enemy who still chose to protect life. On Concordia Prime, I stood alone in the chamber where Thomas Chun had been executed. Elderstone was dead. The old order was truly gone. And for the first time, I understood the depth of our mistake. We had believed humans were dangerous because they broke laws. We were wrong. They were dangerous because they were willing to die to protect others. The galaxy did not end. Many of us had expected it to. After the void engine's destruction, after Elderstone's final madness burned itself out in a flash of collapsing energy, there should have been chaos beyond control. Civilizations should have fractured. War should have ignited everywhere. Instead, the galaxy paused, not in peace, in reflection. For the first time in 10,000 years, there was no council of ancients issuing decrees. No ancient voices declaring what was right, what was legal, what was allowed. Power had vanished overnight, and no one rushed to seize it. On Concordia Prime, the great chamber was empty when I entered it. The elevated thrones where the council had once sat were gone, dismantled, not destroyed, removed deliberately, piece by piece, by human engineers working alongside volunteers from dozens of species. No one would ever sit above the galaxy again. Maria Santos stood at the center of the chamber, looking very small beneath its vast dome. She was no longer an ambassador fighting a losing battle. Now she was something else. A builder. Representatives from hundreds of species filled the chamber's lower tiers. Not the powerful first. Not the ancient first. Everyone. Young civilizations sat beside empires that had ruled star systems for millennia. Species that had never been allowed to speak now had seats equal to those who once commanded fleets. Maria's voice carried without effort. The Council of Ancients is dissolved, she said. Not by conquest, not by revenge, but because the galaxy has decided it deserves better. There was no applause, only quiet agreement. The humans could have taken control, a crystalline delegate said cautiously. You had the fleets, the weapons, the leverage. Why didn't you? Maria did not hesitate. Because power was never the goal, she said. Justice was. Some did not believe her. Fear lingered. It always would. But humans did something no conqueror in history had ever done. They stepped back. Human fleets withdrew from orbit around former council worlds. Military presence was reduced to defensive patrols only. Technologies were shared, carefully, openly, without demands of loyalty. General Marcus Wells kept his word. We didn't tear down the old order to replace it with ourselves, he said in a broadcast heard across the galaxy. We tore it down because it was wrong. A new framework began to take shape. Not an empire, not a council, an assembly. One species, one vote. Age meant nothing. Power meant nothing. Only sentience. The first law of the Galactic Assembly was written in the same chamber where Thomas Chun had been sentenced to death. I watched as it appeared on screens in 1,000 languages. No sentient being may be executed for saving lives. No law is valid if it demands cruelty over survival. They called it the Chun Protocol. On Earth, a black stone wall was raised in a quiet place of remembrance. Names were carved into it, thousands of them. At the top, one name stood alone, Thomas Chun. Below it, a simple inscription. He saved 47. His death saved billions. General Wells stood before the memorial on the day he retired. He placed a hand against the stone and said nothing. Behind him stood Lisa Chun. She had aged. Grief did that, but her eyes were steady. For a long time, she said quietly, I was angry that they turned him into a symbol. Wells nodded. You had every right to be. I know, Lisa said, but I realized something. Symbols matter. They remind people why they must do better. She looked up at her husband's name. He didn't die because he was a hero, she continued. He died because he was a good man who refused to let people die when he could stop it. Wells swallowed hard. That's the kind of galaxy we're trying to build now, he said. Lisa nodded. Then make sure you succeed. On Concordia Prime, the first session of the Galactic Assembly began. No raised thrones. No ancient privileges. Only a circle. I sat among them, not above. Elder Whisper floated nearby, her form calmer than I had ever seen it. Do you regret it? She asked me quietly. What we did. I thought of Thomas Chun standing in chains, of his calm voice, of the moment the beam erased him. Yes, I said, every cycle since. She inclined her head. Then perhaps we are finally learning. The Assembly's first elected speaker was not human. She was Zelnari, young, only 200 years old. Her name was Vina. In her opening address, her colors shifted to a respectful silver. We exist here today, she said, because we failed. Because we valued law over justice, age over wisdom, power over life. She paused. We will not make that mistake again. Across the galaxy, changes followed. Warrior species learned restraint. Ancient empires learned humility. Young civilizations learned confidence. Humanity did not rule. Humanity reminded us what ruling was for. 10 years later, Concordia Prime bloomed with gardens where courtrooms had once stood. Flowers from 100 worlds grew side by side, tended by hands of every shape and form. At the center stood a memorial stone, names carved deep, a reminder. I stood there with Maria Santos, General Wells, Admiral Chun, and Elder Whisper. Did it work? Wells asked quietly. Maria looked at the galaxy beyond the transparent dome. Ships of dozens of species moving together in shared space. Ask again in 100 years, she said. But for now, we're trying. That was the difference. The Council had demanded obedience. Humans had demanded effort. The galaxy had burned. The old order had died. And from its ashes, something imperfect, but alive, had risen. Thomas Chun had never wanted to change the galaxy. He had only wanted to save his crew. But sometimes, the smallest act of defiance exposed the greatest injustices. And sometimes, one good man is enough to remind an entire galaxy what justice is supposed to mean.